introduce our two remarkable panelists, Ali Abu Awwad and Daniel Bar-Tal. Only for the question and answers, possibly. Well, welcome to the discussion, Israelis and Palestinians against the occupation. The Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem has been under Israeli military control for 50 years. June marks the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. The Middle East peace process, as you know, is deadlocked. The last indirect talks, 2014. The new US administration talks about reviving those peace talks. Donald Trump talks about the fact that perhaps he's no longer exclusively committed to a two-state solution. He talks about moving the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and he talks about waiting to expand the settlements. We have mixed messages here. It would be perhaps easy, after 50 years of conflict, to despair. But we have two individuals who are remarkable in their belief not to despair, and we're going to hear from them about the movements that they've set up and their thoughts about the future. Ali Abu Awwad is a Palestinian pacifist and activist. For the past 15 years, he's been active in the nonviolence movement. Born in the West Bank, his mother was jailed for membership of Fatah. Ali spent several spells in Israeli prisons, and he lost his brother who was shot by an Israeli soldier. But still, he believes that non-violent resistance is the way forward. 2 years ago, he created Taghyeer, the change movement. It's a movement which does many things, which he will tell you about. In February 2014, he set up another organization called Roots, which aims to foster dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians. Daniel Bar-Tal is an eminent academic, a professor of political psychology at Tel Aviv University. He's written 20 books, more than 200 articles, and has received numerous awards for his work in political psychology and also for his contribution to conflict resolution. In July 2015, he set up SISO, Save Israel, Stop the Occupation, an organization which seeks a partnership between Israeli society and the Jewish diaspora. Welcome, gentlemen. First of all, let's look at the motivations of these extraordinary men. Ali, if I can ask you, what was your motivation for setting up Taghyeer?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Steve. One word I have to say, many filmmakers come to the zoo in Israel and Palestine, but you came to make a difference. That's why I love and respect this documentary, because you didn't lie. So what motivated me is what has motivated me all of my life. Even when I was to prison, I was not a fanatic, and I have never considered myself as a terrorist. I struggled for my right and my freedom. Then I realized that actually in prison, when I joined a hunger strike, me and my mother, for 17 days, for both of us to meet, I realized that I was blinded to the best weapon for freedom, which is my humanity. But on the other hand, I saw the humanity of the other side. You know, when we say we stand against the occupation, I'm not standing against anyone, by the way. I'm against the system, not the people. Because the people has to be engaged. This is not South Africa, this is not India, and this is not America. The nonviolence struggle has to be different. The model has to be different because of the complexity of the two nations. And finally, I stand nonviolently, so motivated by the people over there. There is enough humanity for nonviolent struggle. And I believe deeply that we have now, it's the time to switch from just having hope to create belief. Hope has to be strategized. Otherwise, we will keep meeting and coming and traveling and eating hummus together and we hug each other, but we will not be able to change the situation.
And could you give us an idea, the Taghyeer movement, how big is it, who is involved in it, and what do they actually do?
Well, Taghyeer has started by community leaders because when you think, when you act non-violently, it's always with the other. And because this situation is not equal, because non-violence for Israelis has different values than non-violence for Palestinians, even like peace itself, peace for Israelis to become more secure but more moral in a way, a moral society. Peace for us is to start living because we are not alive. We are breathing, but we are not alive. So most of the Palestinians will not join the joint struggle because people are stuck with victimhood and blame. Everyone wants the other side to take a step. So we came as community leaders, ex-prisoners, ex-fighters, mayors, governors, women, organizations. We came together to say that non-violence is our struggle to freedom because it has to be a Palestinian identity in the first place. I believe deeply that when thousands of Palestinians will come to the street non-violently, the revolution will be in the whole Jewish world, not just in Israel. This is one. The other thing is, we don't just educate ourselves to be non-violence. Non-violence is more than being a nice person. Non-violence is a whole model of life. We do workshop and we do non-violence training. We do community meeting to explain not why non-violence, but what is non-violence. We do community action. We clean up garbage from the streets. Let us be fair and truthful. It's not all about the occupation. It's also self-responsibility. Non-violence is the best way to celebrate our existence by not being the victims of the occupation. I think non-violence can free the Jews by overcoming their fear, which has become our enemy, because Jewish people also are occupied. They are occupied by their fear. And our mission as Palestinians to overcome that fear. Overcoming that fear will come that the minute that my society will stand non-violently for their rights.
Daniel is nodding in agreement there. If I can just come back, and can you give us an idea of the scale of the numbers of people who are in the Taghyeer movement and perhaps the number of people who've been affected by some of your activities?
99% of the two communities are not engaged in direct action against each other. But on the other hand, they are not active daily for non-violent struggle. So I can say the majority are with us. Just an example, last September, after working so hard over there and everywhere, especially our partnership with Bait of Hope as an organization, the American board, everyone, we succeed to bring more than 3,000 Palestinians for the first time to stand non-violently saying we are not and we will not act as victims, but we are survivors and we are leaders for our future. And non-violence is our message to the entire world. It is an open invitation for us to stand for justice, for solution, and non-violently. So if thousands of Palestinians could come, I know you didn't see this in the media, I know very well, but I promise you, one day, they will not be able to ignore us anymore.
Daniel, you're an eminent professor, academic. What made you switch hats and become a campaigner and decide to set up SISO?
One word, guilt. I really was not transformed. Also, I participated in the Six-Day War actively. I realized from the first, let's say, days, months, that occupation is a disaster. I will say occupation is a cancer in the Israeli society and obviously harming the Palestinian society. It was a matter of socialization. I had a wonderful mother who reared me up in a very open way with values. So I was able to see, I didn't go through any transformation. But at a certain moment, it was clear to me that I have to decide either to be an activist or to be an academia person. And I, maybe for bad or maybe for good, I decided to be, first of all, academia person with always devoting some time to political activism. But when I retired a year and a half ago, it was clear cut for me that I have to make up for the years that I was in academia and do something with full devotion to political activism. And I was thinking what to do, looking at various possibilities, and saw that there are a number of different problems. One, that many of the groups that struggle for peace really work without any coordination. And it really hit me very strong. And it is in Israel, and it is in the world, which means that Jews in the world, many of them who have values, let's call them moral values, liberal values, are very upset about what is going in Israel. But for some reason, they never coordinated their action. So when in Geneva in the morning, a Jew, liberal Jew, is waking up and reads about a new settlement or about a new wave of action, violence, and is upset, he doesn't know that exactly at that time in Stockholm or in even Melbourne, there is another Jew. So I decided that this is a niche that I have to enter and unite to coordination liberal Jews across the world.
And how can you do that? Because yes, it's known that peace groups tend to be fragmented. So how can you bring coordination between Israeli society and the Jewish diaspora, which is, of course, all over the world?
Right. I mean, it was a difficult journey. Where moments of despair sitting here is my daughter, who was one of the major supporter of my ways. There were moments that I felt a lot of frustration, and she always would say, "Dad, you can do it. You will do it." So it was a long journey to contact people, communities around the world, to convince them that there is need to coordinate and collaborate. And today, a year and a half later, I can say with pride that We are in every continent. We are in dozens of countries. People do understand that coordination and unity is extremely important in order to voice in the loudest voice, enough is enough. Occupation has to end, not only because it harms severely Palestinians, but also because, as I said before, it's a cancer in the Israeli society.
And if I can also I certainly want to come up on this idea about the cancer in the Israeli society, but could you also, as I also asked Ali, give an idea of how many members you have at SISO or the scale of it? Because I understand that there's some very leading Jewish academics and very well-known people in the Jewish community who are members.
Right. You know, at the moment, I can say that there are thousands of diaspora Jews across the world, you know, from Australia to South Africa, Europe, and North America and South America. And we are building communities, congregation, entering to synagogues in order to build this very large platform that will be able to say very loudly, enough is enough. And what really is very helpful, that we do share the values that allow us to unite liberal Jewry across the world.
Now I'm interested in this idea of save Israel. Save Israel from what?
From itself.
And
From
what is
itself.
you say it's a cancer.
Because,
develop
you know,
that.
Israelis, maybe it's kind of too presumptuous, maybe monopolistic, so I believe that Israelis are not aware, many of them are not aware on the ways that they are walking towards a disaster. And we try in certain way to wake them and say, look, we are paying a tremendous price and the future looks very, very grim.
You say they're paying a price. Of course they're paying a price in the terms of physical violence,
We saw
death.
in the film, right?
What other price are they paying?
You know, think for a second that it was calculated that the conflict costs every year $20 billion. Every Israeli is paying $3,200 for the conflict. The Israeli government hides it, and they don't know. Think about another aspect, as we saw in the film. Israeli society is a traumatized society, and nobody talks about it. We are paying also a very heavy price for the educational system, which by its nature tries to be closed-minded in order to defend and to keep dominant the hegemonic narrative, and it goes without, you know, paying a price. You pay a price for limiting the scope of education.
Some people would say that it's a price worth paying because it's security that Israelis need, and they get that from the military rule.
No, you know, it's a matter of, as we heard, matter of fear, building insecurity, and just take as evidence, very recently about over 200 generals came together with ideas that security can be established. So the Israeli government, to a large extent, is building some kind of feeling of insecurity, of fear, which we must understand that those are subjective feelings. There is no objective way to measure security. It is a subjective reaction of human beings.
Ali, we saw in the film, it was Fatima, the wife of Jamil, who is skeptical about the peace movement. And there must be many Palestinians who've suffered, who've lost family members, who have been jailed, and who feel very similar to Fatima. What do you say to those people? How can you convince them?
I think they are convinced. But the problem is they have no trust. They don't trust the movement and they don't trust the other. Because she was judging the number of Israeli activists. And what are we doing in Taghyeer is liberating ourselves from that judgment, considering that there is no even one Israeli want peace. The question is, what do we want? That's what we raise in our workshops. The other hand is, you know, both sides are right in a way. But the question is, do you want to be right or do you want to succeed? Because Fatma was right. But is that successful? I'm not sure. She's not happy by the end of the day. By the way, Fatma joined me 9 years ago to Italy, where we led a group, a summer camp group with Israeli Palestinian kids. Her despair came from a place that even myself personally tried that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because part of it is to blame the peace camp itself. Because the peace camp is not strategized. But this is part of a criticism that I'm also in it. I'm not blaming others, I'm blaming also myself. Today, we need to think that how can we empower everyone, or at least the majority. And by the way, always in the history, the ones who change and solve conflicts were the minority. But this minority, if get to be organized and strategized, majorities are followers in general. People are followers of good leaders. So we have politicians, but we don't have leaders. That's the problem. Because politicians know how to talk. Leaders know how to act. That's the difference. So all of these values, when you open it with people, including Fatma, the minute that she will see a serious approach and a strategic movement, I think we're gonna have many of people who are joining. And finally, I admire these courageous Israelis, because don't think it's easy to liberate yourself from your fear and guilt and to stand for the other side. People are calling them traitors, because you cannot create successful nonviolence model as long as extremists and occupation are so organized and they know how to harm. This makes our job much different. But if we are aware of the culture of nonviolence, that the core of nonviolence is not to be led by your life conditions, but to be an initiator for what you want to do. So most of the peace actions are reacting, not acting. That's the difference. We should move from reacting to acting.
And is that what prompted you with Roots, where you actually foster a dialogue, a proactive dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians, and even, I understand, settlers?
Yeah, Roots is the crazy initiative where people consider me as a crazy. I lost friends. I lost Israeli friends, Israeli activists stopped talking to me because I talk to settlers. But today, I'm challenging the Israeli society and the peacemakers. I'm challenging them by stop showing us how nice you are. We want you to take responsibility with the people who disagree with you, not to show us the good face of Israel and that's it. 600,000 settlers. You can come up with any statement that you like against them. Well, I'm the last person to be talking to them. You can come up against them easily. But the question is, will you succeed? Even if you sign a peace agreement, a paper, you call it a peace agreement. Will these people be part of solution? I know all of them, they are not going to be part of solution. Actually, they will try to damage any solution. But at least if we can create an example to crack that wall of right wing, because the Israeli society is divided like the Jewish community all over. They invited me a few weeks ago to J Street, and now I'm going to the States to speak at APAC, where I suggest to them to create JPAC. Jewish people cannot be divided between two camps while we keep suffering under the occupation. They have to stand and take responsibility, and that's why I admire this gentleman for his work, because he's saving his country. He's not becoming nice to the Palestinian. So here, Roots Initiative, you know, Mahmoud Darwish is a great Palestinian poet. He said, to deal with the madness, you have to be crazy. And by the way, many Arab and Palestinians consider people who live in Tel Aviv as settlers. Am I right?
Right.
This is part of the truth. Why we are not able to face that? In my opinion, ideologically, I don't separate between Jews from Tel Aviv or Jews from Hebrew. What we separate is politically. We are not against Judaism. Please stop calling us as racist. We are not racist nation. Any Jewish person is welcome to live next to us, with us, but not as an occupier. Judaism has to be respected, Christianity and Islam has to be respected. And we have to frame that in a political framework that will guarantee independent, two-state, secure, and in cooperation. This is the only model that I can see in the Middle East.
Right.
Yes, your response to what Ali was saying, also, of course, you are trying to build a partnership between Israeli society and the Jewish diaspora. What role do you see for fostering dialogue with, of course, the Palestinians too?
Right. It's really part of the movement, I would say, of the peace movement. And you saw Combatant for Peace, our other organization. I myself participate in a group that coordinates activities with Palestinians. And it's clear that such a cooperation must take place in order to succeed, especially as Ali was telling about the road, and the road is non-violence, and we absolutely cooperate, yeah.
You're making an appeal to the Jewish diaspora. Is this because you feel that without the Jewish diaspora, there won't be mass critical change, which is what you need in Israeli society to stop the occupation?
You know, I try to identify additional vectors that can help. And in my view, this is an important vector, especially for the Israeli government. Israeli government is presenting itself as representing a jury of the world. So if is representing the jury of the world should have a say in what is going on. But the government tries only to encourage support. And when Jews around the world have criticism, then they have all kind of excuses why Jews should not express such an objection. And it's wrong. If you want to get the support, you also have to hear criticism. And this is an important vector, especially among those who see what is going on, the terrible deterioration of democracy, but are silent for many different reasons, and they should not be silent. Bystanders is not an option for Jews around the world.
So you're trying to bring a groundswell of support so that the Israeli government respond. What has their response been to you so far?
You know, we still, at the moment, are very much preoccupied with other organizations. They were just a number of articles in which they said that we are going to spoil the celebrations of the 50 years because we will be obviously emphasizing 50 years of occupation. They will be celebrating 50 years of liberation, liberation of Jerusalem, of the homeland, and we will be pointing out, obviously, the 50 years of occupation. At the moment, the government is very much preoccupied with breaking the silence, B'Tselem, Peace Now, etc. But I am sure that once our voice will be loud, that we will be attacked. I personally am attacked from time to time. They don't like my research questions, so I am on different blacklists in academia, but I am proud to be there.
Ali, the same question to you. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader, any response from him?
Yeah, I think, well, the Palestinian Authority is not against us. I think it's not the issue. Mahmoud Abbas has been weakened by all of these politics, and he's really, I don't want to be in his place. I mean, he's really in a very hard position. But also there is interior Palestinian political arguments between Palestinian political parties. That's why people today listen to us. We need the national movement that will be courageous enough to support the political leadership to go more for nonviolence, because this is one of the statements of Mahmoud Abbas himself. But you know, the problem is the people, because when two nations decide to live in peace, nothing will stop them. Not even the political leaders, because these politicians, their credibility to be elected based on violence and blood. If you are ex-general in the Israeli army, you have enough blood in your hand, you are a good candidate. If you spend 20, 30 years in the prison as a Palestinian, you are a good candidate to be a leader. So the issue here that, listen, I'm not expecting any support from anyone. And sometimes I don't want support from specific people, because Taghyeer is not labeled under any political party. We don't need more political parties. We need a national movement. That's how do I understand nonviolence, where different people from different political parties and organizations will feel free to join by not giving up their own identity wherever they are or wherever they act.
And you're creating this movement in the West Bank, but I have to ask you, what about the Palestinians in Gaza?
You know, we always speak about Gaza, we always judge Gaza. Even before Hamas, Gaza has not been supported, actually. What happened in Gaza is not peace. When Israel withdrew from Gaza, that was not peace. That was doing the right thing in a horrible way. When you get out from a place like this, it's a big support for violence, because Palestinians has told themselves that the only language that Israel understands is rockets. Let us give them more if they were ready to go out. That's what happened. That was not a peace process. On the other hand, let us focus in one successful model. Then you will see by your eyes what the reaction of Gaza will be. Three weeks ago, there was a huge demonstration in Gaza about the electricity issue. 50,000 Palestinians has came to the street in Jabalia refugee camp because of there is no electricity, and it was mostly against Hamas. So it's not about being against Hamas, but being pro what? That's the question. If you stop being against Hamas, then what does that mean? Is there any alternative? By the end of the day, people don't consider Hamas as a terrorist movement. Hamas considers itself as a freedom-fighting approach, and they don't even consider themselves fanatics. You have to understand the Palestinian society, otherwise you will never be able to connect with this society and to support it non-violently. So by the end of the day, we are not standing against anyone. We are thinking how to engage even Hamas to identify with non-violence. And believe me, this is not impossible. I met a group of 60 wanted Palestinian people from Al-Aqsa Murder Brigade that sit around me with weapons, with M16s. And we had argument, 4 hours of argument. After 1 year, this militant brigade, which is the biggest militant brigade in the West Bank, belongs to Fatah, has gave up fighting, and they signed an agreement with Israel through the Palestinian Authority not to fight anymore. Since 4 or 5 years, more than 70 of them has been assassinated, even though the agreement. So sometimes it's not about standing against violence. It's about creating a framework where when people stop acting violently, they will be part of a successful model of nonviolence. Until today, we couldn't succeed to bring a successful model, even one model that can motivate people in Gaza or in the West Bank to go for nonviolence, and this is missing in our process. Because you know what? We target emotion. We make people feel good with themselves. But this will not be enough. Because where Jamil live in refugee camp, this also embarrassed him by being with Israelis, because by the end of the day, he became a refugee and he's still living in a refugee camp. That is the big challenge, which is the political reality. It's not the people, whether they are in Gaza or in Sderot or even in Hebron, Jewish and Palestinian.
Could you very simply then just explain what your strategy is for success? What are the indicators for success? How do you know that you're moving in the right direction?
I will not tell you all of it, because part of it has to be secret, I'm sorry. But our strategy is based on people, empowering community leaders. Why Combatants for Peace succeed? This is the only organization, by the way, that I will be able to join proudly. Because this organization has ex-fighters, people with credit. That's why people cannot really or attack them or call them as traitors. So our strategy is based on 100 community leaders from all over West Bank to empower them non-violently, and they become messengers of and carriers of the movement on the ground. Other part of it is to partner with you. We need you people, because alone we cannot do it. And what's happening in your country and every country has taught us a lesson, especially in America, that as long as we are divided, as long as fanatics, politicians will keep using us. We have to stop that. Finally, I think we need joint actions. Joint actions are extremely needed, but we have to take self-responsibility by creating development in our society, at least as Palestinians, because we are not equal. But on the other hand, to guarantee non-violent resistance, because this anger has to find a place. Otherwise, it will go to places that we all don't want this anger to go. It's like adopting your anger and using it. That's our strategy.
Okay, so we have some indications of the strategy. Watch this space. Daniel, what's your strategy for success? How will you know that you're on the right path?
I am more pessimistic. You know, I believe that we have a long way, and it cannot come overnight. It's a long process that in which you have to combine many, many factors or many vectors. So clearly, I agree with Ali that people are sitting in this room are part of the coalition, whether Jews or non-Jews, and I would like to see much more pressure coming from Europe in the ways that the international community is involved in other places where injustice or immorality take place, and it's important that international community will voice its resistance. I believe that it's, we need, you know, the kind of strategies that Ali was saying in the Palestinian society to use non-violence, and we need a very long way to persuade Israelis, which at the moment are under, you know, I wanted to say indoctrination, but probably true, where a great majority of Israelis accept the right, or hawkish, as we say, way of dealing with the conflict, especially when we have for, it's almost 17 years, of the right-wing government that has a control over the institution, channels of communication, educational system. So don't be surprised that Israelis are taking a hawkish position, and we need a very long-term work in order to try to persuade. But I think that the pressure from outside is very important.
Before I take questions from the audience, if I can just ask you, you said you are by nature pessimistic. What then do you make of the Trump administration?
You know, the easy answer will be not much, but I think that it's an unpredictable card in many respects. It's chaos, and in chaos sometimes you can build something. You know, I just heard in the morning that he's going to meet with President Abbas. I know also that there is a lot of discussion within administration with the Israelis about settlements. So it's not as easy as the right wing was predicting, that Trump is coming and it will be a completely new day for the rightists in Israel. It's much more complicated. What eventually will come, we don't know, but there can also be a surprise.
Do you think it will energize your movement?
Yeah. You know, I am coming from United States, and I have said that we were worrying because liberal Jews in United States, a majority of them voted for Hillary, about 70% of them. So they are very much preoccupied with what is going on there on many, many domains of life, environment, etc., etc., etc. But what we found in the visit in J Street meeting, where 3,500 liberal Jews were together, thought because of the particular alliance between Netanyahu and Trump and the involvement of Netanyahu, even in the American politics, they feel that they have to struggle against both of them. So I was coming back with optimism on this particular level.
Your view on what we know so far about the new US administration and the Middle East peace process, and what impact will that have on the movements that you have created?
I'm not expecting a lot from the American politics. Actually, I'm expecting more from the American Jews more than the American politicians. Because we had Obama for 8 years. What did he do? And now Trump. I think Trump, I came from J Street also and from different synagogues and mosques, and is a good alarm for us to be united. Now is the time, and you can see there are movements are waking up today in America. So in one hand, you need to know how to play the game by transforming and by taking the fruits in the most hard environments. That's one. The other thing is, I think Taghyeer as a movement has to embarrass the occupation and these who call themselves leaders like Trump. Third, Trump has to see disturbing peace. That's a model, a lesson to Trump, that if you want to interfere in our conflict, this is the way to do it. Because it's a joint voice for solution. Finally, I'm traveling to the state, by the way, tomorrow. Maybe I'll come back. You are responsible, okay? I think Trump, and I'm gonna say hard thing, I hope that the Jewish people especially will understand what I'm going to say. Trump is an agent for the Jewish blood. Because the minute he mentioned that he will going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, means that he doesn't respect the Jewish blood. Because a lot of blood will be lost because of that.
Right.
Audience, you've been very patient. Please, it's now your time, and I can see a gentleman in a black jumper. I'm going to take questions. I'll take a question from, first of all, this gentleman, and please say your name and who you would like to answer it, and then I'll come over there.
Emmanuel Deona pour le Cercle Martin Boubert et la ville de Genève, le conseil municipal de la ville de Genève.
Okay.
Je voulais d'abord remercier.
If you could just wait one moment while the gentleman put their headphones on, as the question will be in French.
Je voulais d'abord remercier le JFDH, JCall Suisse et tous les autres partenaires ICAM pour cet exceptionnel événement. Je pense qu'on a pu voir les deux faces de la médaille de cette histoire. D'un côté, cette violence extrême,
with extreme violence, terrible situations,
militaire des deux côtés,
and the place of the military on both sides, but there is an immense hope from civil society, people who offer another solution and people that actually disturb this situation.
Sorry, sir, your question.
Déjà là à Genève l'an passé. Et ma question est la suivante.
So my question
On
is
comprend l'importance de la dimension
that we understand the importance of the psychological aspect of things, but from a political point of view, there are very alarming signs. Recently in Israel, a law has been adopted to prevent foreigners who support the boycott of the occupied territory to go to Israel. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, there is the extreme right in Europe that supports strongly the extreme right in Israel. And we have exactly the same initiative in Switzerland from the UDC political party here.
So your question, if you could just, vous pourrez préciser votre question.
Comment faut-il réagir
So how
à la criminalisation
do
du
we
mouvement de
react
boycott?
to the criminalization of the boycott movement, and how can the civil society react in the face of this new situation?
Qu'on appelle de ses voeux dans la diaspora juive sont elles-mêmes criminalisées. Merci.
Okay. Daniel.
You know, I don't have any magic answer. I believe that it's a mostly rhetoric question, because what I would say is that it's true. The context is changing. We see that in many countries, right gets strength, and the right is collaborating with the Israeli government. But what does it mean? Should we go home and say it's enough? I think that this type of steps should really strengthen our motivation to find ways, maybe more, original, maybe more creative, in order first to unite. And I think that the struggles that goes on in Israel should be part of the more international struggle around the solution that is moral, that has justice in it, and it's a long way. I don't believe that within a year or two we will end the occupation, but I believe that only by struggle and building coordinated struggle we will move steps forward in order to end it.
And your question was about the boycott, yes? BDS, do you have a, if we want to deal with this question, because it's obviously out there, what is your view?
SISO does not accept at the moment BDS on a very general level, and does accept a boycott of the settlements. And within this, I would say, arena, there is really, really much to do before you come to sanctioning the state of Israel.
Your view on the BDS boycott, divestment, sanctions movement?
Well, if you ask any Palestinian, he will say definitely. I mean, that's, listen, sometimes we take steps in life, but we always has to be clever more than right. What does that mean? I think there is a framework of non-violence has to be settled first, in my opinion, as a Palestinian. Over there, on the ground, an international Palestinian non-violence movement will embrace first the occupation. Then Israel cannot be free always to decide what is good and what is bad for Israel. There will be a time that boycott will be extremely, not just needed, successful. Because it has to be together. You cannot ask for boycott. I mean, you ask wherever, whenever you want, you can. But if you want to be it successful, help the Palestinian to raise this non-violence movement and help Jews to take responsibility about the occupation. It's not just one part. The other part of it, I will tell you, I will advise anyone to boycott Israel if he's fed up. It's much better to boycott Israel than supporting suicide bombers. Am I right? If you are fed up. Third, the BDS movement is another alarm among the Israeli politics. But it's also alarm among our politics to the Jews. The Jewish people, you know, the BDS has been settled since years, okay? And today, it's more international than over there where we live, which has to be more over there where we live. The Jewish people has to learn a lesson that Palestinians still building settlement by their hands, still going to Israel and buying and working in Israel. That's a big example and proof for Israel that the Palestinians are the closest people to Israel more than the interior world. That's why the stupidity of the Israeli politics should not discourage the Palestinians from their dignity. Otherwise, yes, BDS boycott, as long as it's non-violence, it's needed and it's urgent even.
There was a lady over there, if you could say your name and your question, and if it's for a specific person, either Daniel or Ali.
Thank you. Thank you for this big world platform, because I learn a lot from your side. This best film, thanks to filmmakers and thanks to founder of this festival, because Taboo now came to platform for dialogue. And I have a question, because I came from Kyrgyzstan. My name is Tolikan Ismailova, and sometimes we use compassion when we work with vulnerable groups, prisoners and refugees, migrants, people. And I learned from Abu how compassion go to human rights. So first compassion, and after came human rights for vulnerable groups. And thanks for this non-violence big movement, we joined to you. And I have a lot of best friends from Israel and best from Palestine. And of course, we support to your these activities, and we understand about the cost of these activities. My question, could you give the best academic and best activist how you put for your strategy compassion and impunity? Because without this, it's also, we should be very responsible. And how this, your strategy, non-violent strategy, compassion and impunity. Thank you.
Okay, if I've understood the question, it's about the link between compassion and human rights, and is that part of your strategy?
Yeah, one of our biggest challenges that both sides are victims. That's really big deal. More than that, neither one has any other place to go. And the whole world don't want us, both of us. Let's be truthful. That's our destiny to live over there. So when you design your actions, you should not close people down. Create empathy and create sympathy is so needed in nonviolent struggle. When Gandhi even spoke about nonviolence, about the Satyagraha, he spoke about nonviolence action and love, which is himsa. Love has to be there, but it should not be just love, because you know what? We don't love each other. Let's speak the truth. We don't trust each other. I'm not sure that we hate each other. We are angry on each other. It's not hatred. You have to know someone to hate him. We don't know each other. We are so stereotyped. So when we design our actions, I believe that this model of combatants for peace succeed because they know how to speak to the emotion, and they know how to engage themselves, not disengage themselves and label the others. Have you seen this reaction where the Israeli right wing were attacking them? They were silent because they understood their society. That's why I'm telling you, boycotting Hamas will not help us. You have to push Hamas to be part of us, not to boycott Hamas, or boycotting the settlers from speech, not from action. Don't misunderstand me. Settlers have to come to the stage because they have to give answers that can create empathy by showing their Judaism without being occupiers. This is what we are trying to do in Roots, to have settlers standing and saying, listen, we are Jews, our Judaism was born in the West Bank, but we don't want to practice our truth by turning you, Palestinian, to become our victims and challenge every solution maker in this land. That's a courageous step, and this conflict especially need madness and courage to be solved, not even like any non-violence movement.
And an academic perspective on the link between compassion, which is of course what you're building through non-violence, and the link with human rights.
So as a person that specializes in studying conflict, I would say that on the one hand, we have beautiful slogans, empathy, compassion, morality. And I want to say that reality is much more complex. First, moral consideration do not appeal to the great majority. And I know that a very important condition is to build perspective taking that we saw in this film. So maybe films like this can serve as a mechanism that you will be able to reflect, stop for a second and ask yourself, what is going on the other side of the wall? But people, in most of the cases, do not ask. So if you heard me, I approach from the point of view of the benefits for Israel. Because what I learned is that it's true. In a room, when I meet with people, I can do a lot of intervention of different kind. Build perspective taking, I can build compassion. But in reality, when you are bombarded by information coming from the government, it's extremely difficult to bring sanity to this type of life. So I am sober enough, and I can, here also speak in terms of slogan, but as a social psychologist, I understand that the situation is much complex on the Palestinian side, on the Israeli side, and I welcome, I think that the work by Ali is extremely important as a kind of demonstration that it's possible to do. But in reality, when I am asked what to do with the Israeli public, my answers will be very different.
And I'd like to take one last question, which is from the lady who's in front of me and wearing the stripy shirt. What's your question and who's it for?
Thank you. It's switched on? Yeah. Thank you very much. My name is Gisela, and my question is for Ustaz Ali. Thank you for your work. I just wanted to mention, I think very briefly, because when the question came up about Gaza and engaging the community in Gaza, it wasn't really referred to the fact that there is a very engaged and vibrant civil society in Gaza that is working for nonviolence and working for human rights. And I had the great privilege to work there for some time with the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, and there are many others on the grassroots level and in the communities. And one of the classic strategies of oppression and occupation is to divide the people amongst themselves. And I think that there has been, you spoke about the division between the Palestinian parties, and there is a very strong divide between the West Bank and Gaza because of the physical divide. I suppose I'm nervous because it's not really my place to speak about
this. That's fine, but do you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, what is your strategy for engaging with your fellow Palestinians in Gaza and breaking down that divide and making sure that those civil society organizations are also part of the movement that you're so brave and principled to proceed with? Thank you.
Well, I will answer your question by not answering half of it. Because it's not about now influencing you. That's not just my interest. I mean, it is my interest, but there are things that I cannot say, really. But the other thing is, I know that 99% of the people of Gaza will stand non-violently for their rights. And the minute that Israel will flew Air Force and tanks to Gaza, they don't kill Hamasnik fighters. They kill innocents. Because the fighters are hidden. And the one who pay the price are the innocent people. And I think people of Gaza, exactly like the West Bank, has been fed up from their own political parties and the occupation. And today, there is enough despair to create hope. And as I told you, hope is not enough. That's why I'm not that much optimistic, but I'm a believer of what we are doing today. Because it came to action, and I know that there are international organizations with Gazan activists are doing amazing work in Gaza, and no one killed them. I'm repeating this again and again. Hamas are not fanatics. If you like it or not, the credibility for violence over there comes from the occupation. That's what motivates and push violence and fear of the Jewish people. The Jewish fear is a factory for violence from the Jews and from the Palestinians. This fear actually has been implemented in the Israeli politics, and we supported that as Palestinian by leading violence attacks. Because the minute that we act violently, whether you call it a freedom fight or it doesn't matter, the minute that we support the occupation. It has been designed for us like that. It's like a trap that the occupation want us. So finally, Palestine, or when we talk about two-state, Gaza is an extreme part of that state, not just because of resources and port and water, but as a community, as a culture. Israel will be much, much, much safe if West Bank and Gaza will be united than being divided, which is the opposite of what is Israel doing today.
I'm getting some very strong signals from Leo Kahneman that it's time to wrap up the discussion. So I'm going to give 30 seconds, and that really is 30 seconds. Daniel, do you have a message to this audience?
Right. The message is very simple. Don't give up. You know, this is an easy solution to sit at home, to read the newspaper and say, oi, oi, oi. Join in the struggle wherever it is, to be part of the international community that struggles for morality and justice. And at the moment, we in the Middle East have a terrible, really, disaster in terms of occupation. Occupation by its nature is exploitative, discriminative, and brutal. There is no another occupation, and we must stop it.
Ali, 30 seconds. What would you like from this audience and from people who are hearing this discussion?
One of the things that keep us dying over there, that when you conflict between each other here, please stop taking sides. Just try to create a framework to become in the side of the solution, to be pro-solution. Being pro-solution doesn't mean to blame this or just blame that. I know we are not equal, but you can be an important part for the solution over there. The other thing is, we will not make it just open and telling you, just do something. We need your support, we need your engagement. Raise a campaign which can start from this country, but it will become global, because we're gonna be thousands on the street. We don't want to march together over there. March with us. Bring Muslims and Jews and Christians and Buddhists and whoever together, because with no flags, you know, because it's much better. No flags, and raise your voice that your politicians and the international community cannot be silent anymore, because we are fed up. Otherwise, you will, by your silence, you will support a creation for a fanatic, death, violence environment that will affect your life back here.
Ali Abu Awwad, thank you very much. Daniel Bar-Tal, thank you very much. Stephen Abcon, director and producer of Disturbing the Peace, thank you very much.
Thank you for the translator. Thank you. Thank you very much.